Good morning and welcome to this morning's Indiana Justice Reinvestment Advisory Council, or JRAC, meeting. My name is Chris Goff and I serve as an Associate Justice on the Indiana Supreme Court. I have been designated by Chief Justice Loretta Rush to serve as JRAC's chair. Later in the agenda, members of JRAC will be given an opportunity to introduce themselves and to provide a brief report on any work or news that might be of benefit to JRAC. The first item on the agenda will be approval of the January 29th, 2021 JRAC meeting minutes. The minutes from the last meeting in January were sent to all members prior to this meeting. And at this time, I'd ask members for any recommended changes, or if there are none, for a motion to approve the minutes.
Justice Goff, I'd make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, thank you, Judge Spitzer. I have a motion to approve the January minutes. Is there a second?
This is Doug Hunsinger. I'll second.
All right, good morning, Doug. Thank you. So we now have a motion and a second to approve the January minutes. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving the minutes from the January 2021 JRAC meeting, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Very well, motion carries. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is news on Indiana Coronavirus Relief Fund, or CRF. And at this time, I would like to welcome and introduce Chris Johnston, Director for the Indiana Office of Management and Budget, as well as Kirsten Haney, Assistant Director for Public Safety for the Indiana State Budget Agency. Both are going to provide some information regarding Indiana's status with the Coronavirus Relief Fund. So welcome, Chris and Kirsten, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. And thank you for April helping me out with the video side of this and the PowerPoint. And it's a pleasure to be here with the council. And what I would like to do is just provide an overview of the federal assistance packages that have been enacted in the last year in response to the COVID-19 public health emergency. We'll definitely spend most of our time on the Coronavirus Relief Fund, but if we move to the next slide, I want to just provide some context as far as the federal legislative actions. There have actually been 5 different packages that have been adopted starting back in March 6th of 2020. And then there were 2 others very quickly adopted, and then a 4th in the month of April, and then this last one that was enacted on December 27th of 2020. The first package was really just the immediate response. It dealt with a lot of public health departments and funding to get up to speed on testing and trying to get labs prepared for what, well, no one was prepared for what was yet to come, but to start funding for those activities. The Family First Coronavirus Response Act on March 18th really turned more towards individuals, and that's where a lot of the assistance dealing with unemployment insurance, emergency leave, emergency paid sick leave, those activities were really adopted. The thing that people have probably heard a lot about is the CARES Act, and that was adopted or enacted on March 27th, the Coronavirus Aid, Relief, and Economic Security Act. The first 2 were very small funding. These are national numbers, and so these were federal appropriations. The first one, the March 6th, was about $7.8 billion. The March 18th legislation was $3.4 billion. And the CARES Act on March 27th is $1.9 trillion. then came back in a month later on April 24th, and there were adjustments to the unemployment insurance program, as well as a replenishment of the Paycheck Protection Program, which we'll touch on here in a second. But that was additional funding was $483 billion. Those first four packages in today's vernacular are commonly referred to as CARES 1. All of those packages, because they were enacted in a short period of time, really interacted. There were a lot of interactions between the different provisions of this federal legislation. And so a lot of people just refer to the CARES Act, and there's probably elements when you hear people say the CARES Act, there's probably elements within all of these that they might be referring to. The last package at the end of the calendar year was $900 billion. And we'll touch more specifically on that because that is still in the process of implementation. But on the next slide, there's still, I want to go through the different funding channels because again, I think this is important context for the group. There's probably 2 to 3 primary funding channels that this money has come out of. Obviously, and I haven't put it on this slide, but the federal government and the federal agencies have received their own funding. And so there's appropriations directly to those federal agencies. But the two that we hear most about are the direct assistance to entities, organizations, and individuals, and then the funding that has come or will be coming through the state government. And so I'd like to touch a little bit on that. The direct assistance to the entities and individuals, and I've listed some of those there, but as far as the hospitals and community health centers, there is a fund out of Health and Human Services called the Provider Relief Fund. And just as a point of reference, about $2 billion has come to Indiana organizations, over 4,000 entities. And so that's directly to hospitals, clinics, community health centers have received that money. Entitlement communities, as an example there, it's sort of an odd phrase, but this is deep into the federal bureaucracy language, if you will. Entitlement communities are those that have received funds directly from the federal government for other programs. They're generally communities with a population of 50,000 or more. And so let's say in Indianapolis, a Fort Wayne, a South Bend, for community development block grant, you may have heard about CDBG and some of your other activities. Some of those programs or entities have received programming and funding through those existing channels and have received the money directly from the federal government. Higher education has received money directly from the federal government, and then also similar to the CDBG I just mentioned, local public housing authorities, airports, urban transit systems also receive money directly from their federal awarding agencies. The other area with direct assistance are those that we've heard a lot about. So unemployment insurance, I don't have the most recent numbers, but I think about a month ago, unemployment insurance total payments were about $6.4 billion to Hoosiers. About $1.4 billion of it was the state share. We mentioned and then we've got SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program, the Paycheck Protection Program, which I had mentioned. That is a form of loan which can be turned into a grant as long as payrolls have been maintained. About, let's see, I think over 70, maybe 72,000 businesses in Indiana have used the Paycheck Protection Program, and the funding level is about $9.5 billion. And then the Food Assistance Program, that one I didn't put the full title. It's called the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program. That's direct payments to farmers and agricultural producers. And those payments are, I think have totaled, the first two rounds have totaled over $600 million to Indiana producers. So when you hear about people, you may have been in your communities and you hear people talk about, I've received some of this CARES Act funding. It may have been money that they've received directly from the federal government and not necessarily to the programs I'm going to talk about next. And that is the $5 billion that has been received or is passing through Indiana state government. And so the Department of Education, it has been more of a pass-through entity on that, if you will. That money is going to school K through 12 school corporations. But the Department of Education has also had a competitive grant program there. Community development, there's several. I mentioned the Community Development Block Grant. That is an existing program that has received additional funding. The rural transit programs, the rural transit, that money does come to NDOT, and then that goes out to those programs. And then human services, there's a variety of the area through FSSA has participated with the AAAs, the area associations for aging, as well as other providers have received funding through FSSA. If you wanted to see what those entities are, there's about 3 dozen separate grants involving about a dozen state agencies that are administering those programs. And again, they've been COVID specific, but they've generally used existing grant programs and have just provided funding through those channels. And so they have not really had to establish anything new other than specific rules related to the public health emergency. Contrary to that, the fund that you probably heard a lot about is the Coronavirus Relief Fund. And that was, April, if we can move to the next slide, was about $2.4 billion that was distributed to all, or that was Indiana's share of what went to the states. You may see reports that it was $2.6 billion. Indianapolis and Marion County exceeded a population threshold where they received funding directly from the U.S. Treasury. There were very specific, but yet broad uses about what the funding could be applied towards. Necessary expenditures incurred due to the public health emergency, expenditures that weren't accounted for in the most recently approved budget. And then this changed at the end of December. That was part of the package that was adopted, is those expenses needed to have been incurred, or those costs needed to have been incurred before December 30th. That has since been extended to December 31st of 2021. A prohibition is a prominent prohibition that caused a lot of conversation in 2020, is that the money could not be used for revenue replacement. And a lot of entities had revenue impacts to their budgets, particularly in the very first few months of the pandemic. And so there was some concern there, but that was not an eligible use. The other thing that is interesting or challenging is the U.S. Treasury is not really a federal granting agency. And so they themselves had to get up to speed about putting out guidance. There were not any rules, unlike, I'm trying to think who might be on this call here. Unlike Devin over at the Criminal Justice Institute that deals with the Bureau of Justice or the Department of Justice, they have set programs that have been established for years, and they generally know how those run. The U.S. Treasury had to stand this program up, and they did in about a month with some general guidance, but then there was just periodic, frequently asked questions that would come out every two weeks or so, and decisions that may have been made had to be adjusted based on that guidance that would come out from the U.S. Treasury or their inspector general. So how did we manage this money? So we, on the Coronavirus Relief Fund, we established and documented the governance with MOUs between the state budget agency. And here's a list. May not be a comprehensive list because we've added and made some adjustments as far as the agencies that have been participating. But this is a good snapshot, and we'll go through some of these programmatic initiatives here in a second. The direct expense MOUs, one thing I wanted to mention is with the Supreme Court, they sort of fall in both categories, and that might be a good example of how to explain the difference between the two. I call one programmatic and one direct expenses. The Supreme Court has an MOU with the budget agency, I want to say $600,000, $700,000, and that's split for two purposes. One was to get personal protective equipment out to the court system, and so that was a direct expense. That's what is an example of many of these direct expense MOUs, is covering plexiglass, face masks, gloves, gowns, all of those things that might be involved. Department of Correction, we've had to make some adjustments with their food services contracts for social distancing, for their medical services, for the offender population as well. Those would be direct expenses, primarily medical or public health expenses that we've tried to cover. The other example within Supreme Court for the that's programmatic is they have stood up or sort of revitalized a program from the past for landlord and tenant facilitation. So I'm not sure it would necessarily be classified as mediation, but a program to help in those situations where, to try to prevent evictions. And we'll talk about rental housing here in a second. But again, some other direct expenses would be the BMV to reopen to face-to-face customer contact, a lot of plexiglass and social distancing, reorganizing their office. We've got the General Assembly had to set up a whole new House of Representatives over at the South Building. And so we had electronic costs, computer costs and things to set them up for their operations. So those are just some examples there. The major buckets on the next slide, I think of them in these categories: the public health response, economic and business relief, local government, and again, direct expense recovery. And these are subject to change because of the extension of the date that I mentioned from the end of 2020 to 2021. So there may be some massaging, but the percentages will probably shake out roughly the same that you see here. About 90% of the money has been allocated, committed, or obligated, with about 10%, maybe about 250 million is yet to be firmly committed. There's a list of program ideas that we're still evaluating here. But if we start, what I'd like to do is go through the next couple of slides and give you some of the specific examples that fall into these major functional categories. So in the public health response, not surprisingly, the Department of Health is a big participant. And so you can see the costs that have been obligated for their activities, primarily in the area of testing and contact tracing, and then some PPE purchasing and distribution. Along the same categories on the next slide is related to the Indiana Economic Development Corporation. They actually set up their own marketplace. You may recall the stories in the newspaper and the media about counterfeit masks or the supply chain disruptions, about getting a lot of the PPE. The folks at IEDC, unbeknownst to them, actually became quite integral in the supply chain of getting these, of vetting the companies who to buy with. And as you can see here, actually working with Indiana vendors to repurpose some of their manufacturing facilities to create masks and gowns and produce some of the PPE. And you have some of the statistics here as far as their deliveries to other entities. And not included here is what health primarily delivered the PPE that to other healthcare organizations. The final one on the public health response is really helping. A lot of FSSA and Department of Child Services work with other providers. They don't have direct hands-on to those services to their clients, but a lot of provider assistance and support, a lot of day services for the disabled and aging virtually shut down because they couldn't congregate early on in the pandemic. And so there were provider sustaining grants that were provided. Nursing facilities obviously were on the front line and impacted very significantly. So one focus there is really helping those providers through this tough time, not only with the services that they could provide, but also being sustaining them during this period so that when we can congregate and provide greater services, they're in a position to do so. In the economic and business relief area, the workforce cabinet was a significant player in this. This is one of the programs, up to this point in time, all of these programs I've discussed have had to be stood up. There weren't existing program guidelines. Here though, we had the good fortune of the Workforce Ready Grant and the Employer Training Grant, existing programs that we were able to, obviously we have a lot of displaced workers, people that are probably evaluating, what should my next job opportunity be? Where should I focus my efforts? And so a lot of effort and funding has gone to these existing state programs that have turned out to be very successful. And as we continue to use this money over the course of the year, this would probably be an area we would continue if the need is there to continue funding these programs as people have these needs. And we deal with the different influences in the employment market. The Indiana Economic Development Corporation had a small business restart program. Just a quick commentary on that is that program really evolved over time because as I mentioned, we had the federal Paycheck Protection Program. And so what we were trying to do is be complementary to the businesses that had already received that assistance and tried to fill what gaps were not being met by the federal program, since 72,000 businesses had already used the PPP. This one we evolved over time. Actually, they hit their stride late in 2020 and maxed out our first allocation. And in fact, they're preparing for another $30 million installment on this small business restart program to gear up in the next few weeks. You may have heard about the supply chain, food supply chain and processing disruptions. So the Department of Agriculture had grants to 41 projects, primarily for meat processors and poultry processors. And then the Unemployment Insurance Trust Fund, we used $400 million to replenish that trust fund. At the start of the year, the balance for that fund was close to $1 billion. And the federal government, Department of Labor, actually directs the state of Indiana that should have about $1.5 billion actually in that fund. Well, as I mentioned, we had already spent that $1 billion and started borrowing from the federal government, which was done in the last recession as well, back in 2009 through 2011. We used $400 million to pay off the loan from the advance from the federal government, as well as starting a replenishment of that. We're still not near where that target needs to be. We haven't come close to replenishing what has actually been drawn from that fund. Local government, I think David Bodorf and from the counties is on this meeting, and great partner with AIC and AIM as far as the Indiana Finance Authority. We allocated $320 million to local governments. And again, with the changing rules, that took a little while to get going, but actually became a very successful program in the fall. The Housing and Community Development Authority has a couple of their own programs that they receive funding directly, but through the relief fund, had a rent assistance program, which came out to a little over $50 million. They are transitioning, and that program has been turned off for the time being. And they are transitioning to an emergency rental assistance program, which I'll touch on here shortly, which is part of the December federal package. The Indiana Destination Development Corporation, a lot of our communities around the state have community organizations, festivals that fund a lot of needy causes, and so that was a program to help us support those organizations that could not really meet their objectives in the course of 2020 because of all the pandemic costs. And then finally, the direct expense recovery. There is a provision that state and local governments can use some of the money to recover payroll reimbursement. And so we are planning to do that. We have not done that yet, but we factored that in to the governor's proposed budget. And then, as I mentioned, also there's a variety of health and safety measures, information technology costs, as far as I mentioned, the House of Representatives, but also just the needs for remote work. On the next slide, and I'll wrap this up really quick, but I did want to give the snapshot of the December 2020 federal legislation. This is the $900 billion enacted on December 27th. I think the ones that I will really focus on, if we want to go to the next page of what affects Indiana, is in the area of education, healthcare, and housing are probably the biggest ones. Well, there's big allocations also for the Child Care Development Grant, but education, this is basically a replenishment of what was in CARES 1 or the CARES Act. So you've got direct funding that's going to school corporations that's based on an education, a Title I formula. And that's based on at-risk kids, kids that have free and reduced lunch. And so that's how that $800 million gets distributed. The Department of Education gets to maintain up to 10% of that. And they're going to be looking at evaluating and supporting and trying to close the learning gap or learning loss that was occurred over the scholastic year for school corporations. Another new angle, though, is the non-public schools, which did not participate, or they actually participated through their local school corporations in a small way back in the spring, but there was a specific allocation for non-public schools, again, for PPE, remote learning, all the costs to get back up and operational. Higher ed will go direct to our higher ed institutions. Additional funding for vaccine support and testing, and then mental health grants and substance abuse grants, I think are flowing through to FSSA. Some infrastructure grants in the airport area, and then NDOT through the highway and bridge program is estimated to receive $236 million. The emergency rental assistance, this is both rental assistance and utility assistance. The thing that I want to note for the folks from around the state, the allocation to the state of Indiana as a whole is $448 million. About 380 of that will be administered by the Housing and Community Development Authority for 87 counties. If you had a population over 200,000, counties or those cities could apply directly to the U.S. Treasury to administer their own programs. So you've got Lake, St. Joe, Elkhart, Hamilton counties, and Marion, the consolidated city of Indianapolis, Marion County. But the city of Fort Wayne applied, but Allen County did not. This is one that I am working with the Housing and Community Development Authority. I think communication is going to be critical on this, because you've got the people, the population centers that probably need the assistance the most, that are running their own programs. And then you hear about housing has more allocation of the money, covering a greater geographic area of the state, and making sure we communicate well is going to be very important for that. And then in closing, the things that we're doing is just really reconciling the existing programs or the final programs, adjusting programs that might need some additional funding. implementing, as we on the slide I just went through, the legislation that was adopted in December of 2020. Monitoring what's going on right now. This week, in the next couple of weeks, federal legislation is being considered, which could provide additional assistance, not only to the types of programs that I had mentioned before for direct assistance, but then also are provisions being considered for direct assistance to state and local governments. And then finally, there is federal reporting that we will do ongoing. That may be extended. It was supposed to go through 2021. I imagine that'll continue on into 2022, just with the extension of the CRF. So I apologize. I thought I was going to be able to get through that quicker, but I wanted to give you these folks that opportunity to get a broader background.
So Chris, this is Chris Goff. I just want to say on behalf of my colleagues on the Supreme Court and all of the justice partners who are represented by this call, thank you for taking time out of your very busy schedule. I know you're a man in high demand this time of year, and this year in particular, but I can tell you that over the past year, we, the various groups represented on this call, have really been able to keep the justice system going, been able to maintain public safety and a venue for people to have their conflicts resolved because of your work. And relatively speaking, I think Indiana has fared well. And I can tell you from my perspective, your presentation has been very informative. Dave Bottorff, Doug Hunsinger, others on the call have kept us apprised. Thank you for Kirsten. She's kept us apprised throughout the course of this, but your ability to weave this all together in such a short period of time is very helpful. And so thank you for everything that you're doing to make Indiana better and to get us all through this, this challenging time.
You bet. Thank you.
Well, very well. With respect to our agenda items, then I'm going to go ahead and take us into the next discussion. I think we could ask Chris questions for the next hour and a half. I know, I hope we can get a copy of his presentation distributed to all members. And then, of course, if there's a need to follow up, I'm sure we can do it. But just in the interest of keeping the agenda moving, we have another presentation I want to make sure we get through. And this is perhaps a good transition because over the past year, virtually all, it at least seems like virtually all of our time has been spent coping with challenges presented by COVID-19. But if you'll recall, there was a time before COVID-19 when EBDM, evidence-based decision-making, was something that was very important. In fact, was a core mission for JRAC. And for anybody who might be listening in or following our meeting today, members of the public, the purpose of EBDM is to really make decisions within the justice system based on evidence. And our presenter today is going to really carry us or talk us through a couple of topics. And I want to introduce her. So our presenter today, Mimi Carter, is the principal for the Center for Effective Public Policy. And in September of 2020, the Indiana Office of Court Services provided JRAC with an overview of the Indiana Evidence-Based Decision-Making Initiative, or EBDM, which has been an important aspect of Indiana's criminal justice reform efforts. And so today, Mimi Carter is going to walk us through a couple of things, and she's going to present us with some future opportunities to highlight Indiana's work surrounding EBDM. Specifically, Mimi will give an overview of two projects. The first project is a summary of NIC, the National Institute of Corrections EBDM efforts from a national perspective. NIC has approved this, and Mimi will be reaching out to certain members on the call today, certain JRAC members, and the EBDM state team for interviews highlighting that work. The second project is a proposal to delve deeper into Indiana's EBDM experience and progress and to write a paper on it. And for that, Mimi is seeking JRAC's approval to make this proposal to NIC. If JRAC and NIC approve the project, Mimi will work with the Indiana Office of Court Services staff and likely some JRAC members to compile information for the paper. The projected publication date for the paper is summer 2021, and the benefit to this project will be a concise synopsis of Indiana's EBDM history and its 2019 strategic plan that can be used to re-engage JRAC members in EBDM as we work moving forward and emerging from the challenges of COVID-19. So without further ado, I want to introduce Mimi and turn the floor over to her. So Mimi, first of all, thank you for joining us, and the floor is yours, ma'am.
Thank you so much for having me and for that lovely introduction. Hello, everybody. I know some, but not all of you, so it's very nice to be at your meeting. Appreciate it. I'm going to share my screen right now. Let me know if you can see my slides. Can I have a thumbs up if you can see my slides? Excellent. So I just have a few things to talk about very quickly. Just Scott has already introduced me. I have served as the principal for the Center for Effective Public Policy, which is a nonprofit organization, for the last 30 years. And we run a number of projects across the country that address critical issues in criminal and juvenile justice policymaking. And one of those initiatives has been the one that we just spoke about, evidence-based decision-making in state and local criminal justice systems. It's a project sponsored by the National Institute of Corrections. It's been underway for 10 years, and I've served as the project director. So many of you know all of this. I'm not doing a long history of this project, just a very short history, one slide. Walk down memory lane for some of you. This project was kicked off in June of 2010. So it's, as I said, now 10 years old. It began with the development of a document that we call the Ebdm Framework that has really been a sort of a guidepost or a North Star in this initiative since its inception. In June of 2010, we sought to identify jurisdictions around the country that were interested in serving as pilot sites. That would endeavor to undertake what we had described as an optimal approach to criminal justice decision-making in the EBDM framework. And it was the very early vision of some folks in Indiana to apply for and be accepted into that project. So Judge Spitzer, here's to you in Grant County as for paving the way for many more who came thereafter. And then we operated this project in phases. So phases 2 through 6 were really the planning and implementation phases for the initial pilot sites. And then ultimately a total of 26 state and local teams around the country, including many of your own. And we are now in a current project that doesn't have a phase associated with it. We had lots of feedback from all corners that the phases were getting very confusing. We're now in a project that we call the Sustainability and Scaling Up. And in this project, we have focused our work on Indiana and Wisconsin in terms of both embedding the work that had been achieved as a much more sort of I'll say, putting EBDM in the DNA of these jurisdictions, as well as examining how EBDM could be expanded in each of the jurisdictions. So that's the project we are focused on right now. We have 2 pieces of work that are underway that bring me to your meeting today. The first is a survey that we're conducting on behalf of the National Institute of Corrections. NIC is interested in expanding EBDM to 1 or more new states. And prior to making that investment, they are interested in understanding from those who have participated in the initiative in the past, what has been most helpful and least helpful in terms of how the project has been structured and the technical assistance that has been provided. So we've been endeavoring to collect the names and contact information of everybody who has played a part as a participant in EBDM over the last 10 years, including those who have moved on to other jobs and have retired. We're attempting to reach out to everyone who's willing to participate in our survey. And that survey is going to be released in the next week or two. So some of you, I think, will receive the survey, and we will welcome your feedback as NIC thinks about future work in this area. So that's the first bit. And by the way, it's a very short survey, take about 20 minutes if you are a person who has participated in all of the phases, maybe 30 minutes. The second thing, which I would really like to sort of dig into a little bit here, is that a part of this project is documentation of the efforts our EBDM states have taken to sustain and expand the EBDM work. So as I described before, to embed EBDM into the DNA of the criminal justice system. And I've had numerous conversations with NIC about the focus of that publication that will result in a publication or a case study. And I have proposed to NIC already, and NIC has supported, and so this proposal. And so we come to you asking if if Indiana is interested in being the focus of that case study. So the purpose of this is to document the potential associated with multidisciplinary and multi-jurisdictional collaboration and alignment. So that's a fancy way of saying to document the kinds of things you've done in Indiana to really embed this notion of using social science research to guide decision-making throughout the criminal justice process, and to do that in a way that's highly collaborative and brings all stakeholders together in very purposeful and strategic ways, and to align philosophies, values, and approaches across the criminal justice system. So why did I recommend to NIC Indiana, and why did NIC readily agree that Indiana was the place that we should focus? I won't tell you about all of the things that you've done, you know it so well, but the work that your state team has done, the pioneering work that Grant County did to lead to the state team and the expansion to other local jurisdictions, the depth and breadth of the sustainability plan. I think you referred to it as your strategic plan or action plan, is incredibly impressive. Some of the pieces of work you've done to really institutionalize your efforts. Just one example is your pretrial certification process, your intention to expand this kind of work to new counties. These are all of the ingredients that lead us to say, Indiana, yeah, rock stars. Let's stand on the rooftop and celebrate your accomplishments. So some details about this in terms of what this would mean if you agree to accept this. And of course, this is a proposal. It's your decision. The final product is due in June. That seems soon, I know. This project has been a little bit stalled because of COVID. I know everybody's experienced that around the table in all kinds of venues, and this is an effort that has not been spared in that way. So our final project is due in June. And I will talk a little bit about what that means in terms of what your commitment to that would be. But I also want to put on the table that if time permits, in addition to a final written product, I have suggested to NIC that we might consider convening a national webinar of, a duration 90 minutes or 2 hours, something like that, to highlight the aspects of in the case study, so that not only would this be a written document, but potentially a national webinar that could be and a sort of next stage effort as NIC looks to promote EBDM to new states. So last slide, in case you're wondering, this is what I envision would be required on Indiana's part if you were to agree to do this. I would appreciate having a small project team of Indiana representatives to work with. I would ask for that team to assemble in early March. Their role would be to gather and share pertinent documents. I have lots of Indiana documents. I'm not sure I have everything, and I'm not sure I have all of the current documents. To help work with me to identify people that would participate in remotely conducted interviews of approximately an hour each. And this would be to explore the kind of work you've done, how you've approached it, what's been challenging, what's worked well, what kind of recommendations you would have for others. And then to vet written draft materials. So everybody who would be participated in the interview would be asked to review at least their portion of the case study, if not the entire document. But then I would ask this project team to review the entire document to make sure that it is comprehensive, it's accurate, it frames the content and an appropriate light, and so on. And then if we decide to go down the webinar path, I would also ask that small work group to help me identify people who would participate in that and to coordinate that. So that's, I open the floor for questions or discussion.
So any questions from JRAC members? And then Mimi, I want to make sure I get from you the two specific asks you want, so that hopefully we can get to approval for your project. So thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Any questions from members for Mimi?
Justice Goff, I don't have any questions, but I think I'd fully support Mimi's ask at this point. I think we've gained a lot from NIC's support of our efforts in Indiana. I think that this is an opportunity for us to pay it forward and also talk about some of the things that we're doing and highlight those. And so I fully support Mimi's ask and would encourage the rest of the members to support it as well. I know we've taken a little bit of a left turn because of COVID with regards to the work that we had, and I think COVID's always been not fortuitous timing, but we kind of transitioned with the statewide EBDM team to JRAC, and then all of a sudden COVID hit, and so that's kind of put us a little bit, I think, behind the 8 ball in terms of melding those two efforts together into one and moving forward with it. So this is another opportunity for us to kind of keep those EBDM principles at the forefront and continue the work that we're doing. So let me just say that I fully support the ask, and I'm willing to help in any way. So,
Judge Spitzer, thanks for your insight and your willingness to step up. Anything else from any members? Any questions? Any other thoughts?
I had one thought, and I'm thinking out loud. Maybe that's dangerous, so we'll see where it takes me here. But I've had this thought before. This is related to the area of competency restoration. It occurs to me that a tool that could help determine whether or not an alternative path to competency is a good idea for folks would be a benefit to the state, for example, if they're appropriate for outpatient restoration or jail-based restoration. And it seems like if we have such a tool in place, it might be worth exploring. if there's a connection to be made. So I know that's maybe 2.0 or 3.0, but I just wanted to kind of put a plug in for it.
Great. Jay, I know you're going to be getting a big ask to volunteer for this small project if it's approved. We want your insight for sure.
That's what I get for opening my mouth, right?
Thank you. Anything else? Anybody else?
I don't.
Welcome, Amber, please.
I was just going to comment too, as being a participant of evidence-based decision-making, and just kind of in the state of what our country is in. I almost feel like there's an obligation for our state to actually, you know, document and provide this information to other states who need this. And I think it's so important. And so I would fully support this. I just think right now the way that our country is that we just have an obligation to fulfill what we've been through.
Glad you joined the group, Amber. That's very well said. Thank you.
Hi, Justice. Chris Naylor.
Chris, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. Mimi, good to see you again. And thanks for being here. And this does look like a good opportunity. But Mimi, I would caution a little bit about potentially overstating the status of Indiana. You know, we have a really good foundation, but since, you know, summer of 2019, you know, progress has been difficult. A lot of that has been due to COVID, but I just think we need to be realistic about significant challenges of sustainability and expansion. And we've got a good plan, but I want to caution because there is much work to be done.
Yeah, thanks for that, Chris. And I totally hear that. One of the things that the work group, if you decide to go down this path, will do is help me stay honest. But I think that's what you've just pointed out as a reality. And what we want to do is describe how this work really plays out. It's long, it's challenging. We get diverted for various reasons. And I think one of the things, though, that Indiana has done successfully is keep your eye on this ball. So I appreciate that. Appreciate your comments.
Thanks.
Yeah, and I do as well. And I think one of the things that made me excited about this, Mimi, is the fact that this way of governing, this way of running a court system requires all of the participants to commit themselves to engaging in a continuing conversation. And there are going to be different perspectives brought to bear. They need to be respected. They all need to be heard. And that allows us to identify common problems and to come up with the best solutions for them. The other thing that I'm excited about, we'll hear about legislation in a little bit, is you know, perhaps a refined way to get that process out to the counties so that we can be looking at the same data and we can help other people make these same decisions in their individual communities. So again, we're really excited that you're here today.
Thank you.
So I don't want to stifle any discussion. If there's anything else, please speak up, members. But if there are no questions for Mimi, I want to make sure that I articulate the two asks that she has accurately, and then I'm going to be asking for a vote on two different things. The first, Mimi, as I understand it, is that you would like JRAC's approval to assist or participate in this Indiana EBDM specific research that you're doing, and hopefully to complete this summer. Is that accurate enough?
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. So with that, I'll call for the question. Is there a motion to support Indiana participation in that by JRAC?
This is Devin. I would make that motion.
Welcome, Devin. Thank you for that.
I'd second Devin's motion, Justice Goff.
Okay, and thank you. Was that Judge Spitzer?
It was.
Okay, great. So we have a motion and we have a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of participating and supporting Mimi's Indiana-specific EBDM work, please indicate by saying aye.
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 Great. And any opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you. And the second ask then that I believe we have is perhaps a bigger ask for those that are involved. But Mimi wants to create a small project team. And you heard her describe the work better than I certainly can, but a small project team for Indiana that would help really share some of the challenges and the successes that Indiana has had as we navigated through EBDM. And so is that accurate enough, Mimi, with respect to my ask? Okay.
Yes, it is, Justin.
And with that said, then, is there a motion to support the work on the small project team?
So moved.
Okay, thank you again, Judge Spitzer. Is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, thank you, Devin. Is there any further discussion? Very well. All those in favor, please indicate by saying aye.
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 And any opposed? Very well, motion carries. And Mimi, is there anything else for the good of the order that you want to share? I know Mary Kay Hudson just started my week sharing this, and we in the court family were so excited to re-engage on something other than COVID and really to get back to this work. So if there's anything that you want to share as parting words, we welcome. Otherwise, though, but thank you so much for being here and sharing what you do with Indiana.
No, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Appreciate your support, and I really look forward to working with you all again. And at that, I'm going to sign off. And again, thanks for having me as a guest to your meeting. I appreciated it.
Thank you, Mimi. Have
Thank
a great
you, everyone.
weekend. Okay, well, thank you, folks. The next item then, as we move down our agenda, is agenda item 5, and that is a report out and or discussion about legislative items. And the first legislative item that we're going to discuss is House Bill 1068, Local Justice Reinvestment Advisory Councils. And for a report out, I would ask to hear from either Representative Fry or Mary Kay Hudson.
Good morning, Justice Scott. Thank you. I don't believe that Representative Fry is on the line, so I'll just give a quick update. 1068 did make its way through the House, and it's been referred to the Senate. Its first reading was referred to the Corrections and Criminal Law Committee. That was on the 18th of this month. I'm expecting that we will see it pop up on their agenda, if not next week, perhaps the week after. I know that I testified on it when it was on the House side. I know other members testified on the bill on the House side as well. So, to the extent that anyone is able and willing to testify that once it hits committee, I think Representative Fry would appreciate that. And I think, looking at the local JRAC bill, and as we're talking about EBDM, everything came up for me. The timing could not have been more perfect, as I think we're moving through, hopefully seeing some light at the end of the tunnel from the pandemic. This bill is moving its way through the legislature. There seems to be very broad support of it. But we also need some ability to provide assistance to the counties in development of the local JRACs, with its training or technical assistance and other forms of ongoing support. So I think this all comes at a really good time. And so related to that, Justice Scott, the only other suggestion that I would have for this group today relative to local JRACs and EBDM is identifying JRAC members who may actually want to serve as part of that project team for Mimi's group, which I think from my perspective, that could serve dual purposes. It could be tasked directly with providing support to Mimi and the NIC project, but then even further down the road as kind of the advisory group, JRAC's advisory group on evidence-based decision-making and how we move this forward. I think that's going to be really critical, assuming this bill passes, of how we're going to take this to the next level in implementation.
Mary Kay, thank you for that. And I see that I meant to ask that in particular, and I neglected to do so. So with respect to Mimi's second ask in particular, and as it relates to local JRAC, I think it's critically important, and I rarely make an ask that I think is so important, to have members of this group volunteer to participate in that work. As we move forward, whatever your perspective is, from corrections, from the prosecutor's office, from a defense attorney standpoint, from the standpoint of collecting all this information in a meaningful way to make grants available. I know we've got Judge Spitzer here, Judge Clark here, who've had various experiences in that in your own communities. We're trying to come up with an idea that will be of benefit to folks no matter what their community looks like, no matter what resources are available in those communities. So the more perspective we can get, professional perspective, community-based perspective, the better the deliverables we're going to be able to make available to those folks in the field and those folks in our communities who we all seek to serve. So, Jay, you mentioned this sort of out of the box, although not really out of the box, thought about getting folks out for competency restoration. I hope you'll be involved. Devin, I know with all your, your data collecting experience, Adam, Amber, your enthusiasm for this, and certainly Chris, with the reservations that have to be articulated as we move forward in some of these things. I hope that all of you would be willing to participate in this. And Mary Kay, is it acceptable if I ask anyone who is willing to serve as a project team member to reach out to you or to April and indicate a willingness to serve, so we can hopefully coordinate some appropriate times to work with Mimi?
Yes, please. Thank you, Justice Goff.
All right. Well, thank you again for that excellent report. And it's so excited about this, so excited about what that means to be able to get this information discussed in each of our communities in a meaningful way, and really allow our communities to benefit from this work. Does anyone have any questions for Mary Kay before we move on to the next item?
Just a quick question. Are there any, do we foresee any other additional amendments coming on House Bill 1068 above and beyond how it presently is? I know that's a difficult question to answer, but
I have not heard any discussions around requested amendments at this point, but I think that does remain to be seen. I would suspect that if Representative Fry learns of anything, he would keep in contact with us. I know that there have been a couple of senators who signed on to the bill as sponsors, Senator Cook and Senator Sandlin. So I think that's very encouraging and positive that we've got interest from long-standing members of the Senate who are interested in this work. I was excited about that.
Mary Kay, I had a question. This is David Bottor from the Association of Counties. I'm supportive of the bill, but with the state JRAC, the state court administration was kind of assigned to be the staffing for that. For this local JRAC, there's not really, maybe you're thinking that the leadership will just sort of develop on its own, but the bill talks about somebody has to write a report and submit it to the state. Will all that just be left up to the locals to determine how they're going to administer this? I know we talked about allowing the community corrections boards to sort of serve in this dual purpose. I don't know if DOC would comment about whether or not their grant money would be appropriately used if the community corrections board wrote the report. Would that follow the guidelines from the grants they give out? So didn't know if others had thoughts or comments on that.
So David, as far as the leadership is concerned at the coordination at the local level, yes. I think we tried to strike a balance between allowing there to be some local flexibility so that they could use some existing groups that are currently working on these issues, such as the community corrections advisory boards, or even a local coordinating council, or even an EBDM policy team that may already be in place. And I think that the key challenge for us as the state council is to provide, enough flexibility. And when we look at the reporting requirements, for example, JRAC is going to be developing those reporting requirements. And I think we have to take into consideration what's already being collected or reported in different avenues, whether that's to the Criminal Justice Institute or DOC or even to our office. Not duplicate those reporting requirements, make it meaningful, and then also provide them supports and mechanisms to be able to do that. I mean, I think that's going to be a really key role for this council. And I think, I know our office is prepared to help take that on with JRAC to provide some training and technical assistance. And I think bringing in Mimi back into the discussion, which is why I think part of this is such great timing, will help us think through those things. I think that with the local JRAC and especially around their reporting, this group has the ability to really be deliberate in what we're asking of the local councils in the way of reporting and data requirements. And I know that everyone in this group is sensitive to that and has some experience on how challenging that can be. So that's the ongoing discussion for us moving forward. And it's kind of the $1 million question of how do we sustain JRAC? How do we move it forward? And then how do we get the locals to where they need to go? I know that to the extent that we have any grant funds that are currently in use for counties, I think our office would definitely support use of those funds to support any of these types of initiatives. And I would defer to Chris and on the DOC side.
Sorry, sorry about that. I mean, we'll definitely, I'll have to speak, with our community corrections director about it. I mean, this is something, we'll definitely be looking at. And I think as we move forward on reviewing the codes and, as a part of this for community corrections, that'll be something that we'll be looking into.
Thank you, Chris. And David, to your point and your question, one of the things I'd like to say that I hope is reassuring is I don't expect that this is going to be particularly burdensome. I mean, the idea would be to really sort of focus conversations at the local level in a way that would allow us to gather some information that would be helpful in deciding where best to allocate resources. And, Mary Kay's point about being able to provide technical assistance, the court provides training to our probation departments every year. Courts are required to report a great deal of information on a quarterly basis. And so I'm optimistic that we're going to be able to come up with some means by which these local commissions can really collect data that will help in that regard without being overly burdensome. So, I think that we'll be able to come to some understanding as to funding requirements, but I'm also hopeful that there's not going to need to be a lot of additional resources either.
And again, I don't mean my comments to sound negative to the suggestion. I just wouldn't want to see this pass and then nobody locally pick up the ball and say, okay, I'm going to be in charge of this and I'm going to make sure the committee meets and we get the report done and collect the data. So, and maybe again, the leadership that's already out there, between the judges and the prosecutors and public defenders, community corrections, probation, somebody will step up and take the ball in each of these counties and carry it forward. So that was my only concern. So,
David, I know that subject to the review and approval of JRAC and the full council, I know that our office is already kind of brainstorming some ideas about if and when this bill passes, the type of information and training and support that we could offer, either under our existing education opportunities that are already available to local jurisdictions with, we do things with pretrial and problem solving courts and probation and those kinds of things. Along those same vein, we can adapt that to this type of training environment at any of our regularly scheduled programming or something special that we could work with the council to develop.
Thanks.
Thank you for that, David. It's very important to ask, so appreciate that. Any other
Justice-
questions? Yes,
Yeah,
please.
Justice Chris Naylor. Yeah, I think David raises a really interesting point. And I think the point of the local JRAC bill, because, you know, there's lots of different audiences for these bills and different levels of familiarity. And so I think it's really important that the point of the bill is how is the state JRAC, state government, and perhaps pilot counties, how are they going to help the rest of the counties, rather than here are more mandates, obligations, responsibilities when we've been given no additional personnel, no additional resources, because there's, you know, none of that comes with this bill. So I think it's important that that's the point of the bill, the first rather than the latter. Particularly, you know, given the environment that we're going to be in for the next 18 to 24 months, it is going to be an unprecedented time for jury trials and that sort of workload. So the real point is help is on the way, not here are more unfunded mandates, for, you know, lack of a better term. So I think it's important that we get that right as this rolls out.
Thank you for that. Agree, Chris. And please, all of you, to the extent that you have these conversations with your constituent bases, I think it's important to keep that point in mind, that we want to make sure that the resources are delivered where they need to be. But in order to make that determination, we really need to have some meaningful data coming from these communities. So I hope that that's the message that's delivered, because that's certainly the intention. And I'm optimistic that we'll get it done. Thank you.
Justice Goff, I apologize to jump in. I guess my thinking is, I mean, it's not like we're getting funding for the Community Corrections Advisory Board either. We get funding for community corrections functions, but we're not getting funding for the board. The ask from that is just get together and meet. So I don't think it's that big of a deal. And so I'd hate to get bogged down in this whole, we need extra funding so that we can have another meeting, 6 meetings a year or something like that. I hope we don't overstate that issue. And so if, you know, people start, you know, getting worked up about that, I think maybe the reminder is just, you know, we're looking for a few more meetings a year. Everybody get together. You should be doing that anyway. You know, I mean, we're supposed to be collaborative, and if you're not, shame on you. You know, then, you know, send a report. And I think we have, as JRAC, control over the content of the report that we're asking from them. And so if it's unreasonable, that's on us, and we need to fix that. So, you know, again, I think we need to make it as easy as possible for any reporting or information we're asking from the counties. But we have representatives from the counties that are, you know, from different, you know, all different aspects of the players, and they'll let us know if we're being unreasonable. We can listen to that. So I think from that standpoint, I don't think it's super burdensome. And then my only other question is, I'm trying to figure out what team that Dave has allegiance to. It's a little bit subtle by his background. So
Yeah, no, again, I just want to make sure, I don't think we have to assign somebody to take up the initiative, but one of my concerns would be we pass this and it just kind of lays out there, and one county just never really, they all point at each other and say, well, you organize the group and you start the discussion. I don't think that'll happen. I hope it doesn't happen. I think, again, there'll be the leadership will naturally step up at the local level, and they'll have these discussions. And again, I'm very supportive of the concept of having these discussions, you know, to meet the objectives of JRAC. And the local EBDM teams will probably be the likely group to pick it up, or perhaps the Community Corrections Board in some of the small counties. So.
Well, it's a great discussion. And again, the reason I'm so excited and optimistic about this is because I believe, as much as I believe in anything, that this is really going to, one, make things better at the local level, and over time easier. But it's really going to have a positive effect on public safety and on the smart allocation of scarce criminal justice resources. But we're all here. We've got our own constituents that we're answerable to and accountable to, and so we're going to need to continue to rely on each of you to come and bring your concerns and engage in discussion here, so that we can be receptive to those constituent bases. But this is going to be an exciting time. So thank you. If there's nothing else on local JRAC, I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next listed item, which is Senate Bill 217 and determination of competency to stand trial. And I would ask Mary Kay again for a report out on that bill. Mary Kay?
Thank you, Justice Goff. We talked about this at the January JRAC meeting. I just wanted to give everyone an update. This is the bill that Senator Sandlin authored to begin to take a look at some of the processes in place for competency assessments, as well as the restoration services. Unfortunately, that bill did not get a hearing. So I have not checked in with Senator Sandlin about that recently, but the latest action from the General Assembly's website said that it didn't make it out of committee. I do think that as we move forward with EBDM and we re-engage in these conversations and the comments that Jay made earlier, I think there's definitely room for the competency discussion within the framework of our EBDM process. One of the things we had really looked at with EBDM was the mental health side of things, making sure that we were paying sufficient attention to the behavioral health needs and the behavioral health system capacity to be able to meet those needs locally. And so I think, it all folds in very, very nicely as we re-engage in some of these conversations. So Jay, I am 100% behind you. We can bring that into the discussion as we re-engage with EBDM.
Mary Kay, any other questions regarding this particular bill? Hearing none, are there any other bills?
Sheriff Clark had a question.
Thank you.
Yeah, please go ahead.
I don't know how to do a hand raise in this particular environment. This is a little different than some of the ones, but the vehicle for this discussion is really House Bill 1127, which is still alive, and we testified in favor of, specifically to the competency restoration piece, and even what I like as much is Representative McNamara's Southwest Indiana treatment centers. I think that's going to serve as a non-custodial kind of model that we've been talking about for years in this environment about, regional approach to this mental illness and addiction issues. So I think that's the bill to watch right there, because it's going to be the one that I think maybe we'll get through. And is perhaps the reason Senator Sandlin's bill was let to sit in committee, because this one will be the one that actually goes through. And I agree with all the discussion previously. I think this is good timing with Mimi, because EBDM is the model, to David's point and to Chris's. And this is a good opportunity for us to sort of market this whole idea of this new paper and say, gosh, look, this was not dropped. This is where this is going. And here are the 11 or whatever counties that were piloted that will come out and help you sort of establish and show you how you do it. And it isn't that hard. And it works. If nothing else, it's going to open up communication, which we've been forced to do anyway during COVID, and get all these different silos talking. I think it's a victory, but all those were really good points. But it's doable if the 11 pilots are ready to step up, which I'm sure they will be.
As always, it's good to have Sheriff Brett Clark at a meeting. So appreciate that insight, Sheriff. Thank you. Is there anything else?
I'll add one thing. This is probably also our report out, but it's related to this, so I'll go ahead and say it now. As we move forward on some of these pilots for restoration and other settings, it's become pretty clear that we're going to need some sort of statutory change if it's ever going to take off in the way we need it to take off. Don't need to get into those details right now, but I think it's pretty clear that, especially around the area of involuntary medication for outpatient commitments, I think some of our partners are going to need almost like a statutory safe harbor before they agree to take that on, and I think that's crucial to that whole process. So it might be for the best that 217 didn't advance this time, and I think we can make a much more comprehensive effort next go round.
Jay, well said. Anyone else have any other bills of interest to JRAC, or anything else that you want to speak to as to legislative efforts right now? Okay, not seeing anyone else, so I'm going to go ahead then and move into our member report outs. And I'm going to go a little bit out of order because I had a report that Adam McQueen needed to step off early. So I'm going to ask first for a report out from Adam McQueen on behalf of Probation Officers Professional Association of Indiana. Adam?
Thank you, Justice Goff. Just a very brief report out. We are actually gearing up for our new Chief Probation Officers orientation. Good time for us to equip our new leadership with really vital skills, HR skills, budgeting, things of that nature. I've got that coming up here in just about 3 weeks, I believe. Aside from that, that's all I had to report out on.
Adam, thank you as always, and have a great weekend, all right?
Thank you, Justice Goff. Same to you.
I know we heard from Chris in the budget presentation on COVID, and I'm not sure if we've lost Kirsten. I know that she may have had to drop off early, but if Kirsten Haney is still on, I'd ask for her to give any additional report out on behalf of the state budget agency. Is Kirsten still on? You're not hearing her? Then I next asked for a report out on behalf of Governor Holcomb's office from Doug Hunsinger. Good morning, Doug.
Morning. Thank you, Justice Goff. I just want to quickly remark on a couple issues related to substance use disorder. I had the opportunity this week to travel up to Anderson, where Aspire is going to open Mockingbird Hill at the end of, or at the beginning of next month. It's a 88-bed facility that will have a component where the criminal justice the system will be able to move individuals through this treatment facility. So it's a wonderful intervention point, ties into the work that the courts have done with the sequential intercept model. So couldn't be happier with the work that they have done, and that this facility is going to be coming online. You know, as we move further in through the vaccination process, we're beginning to see our treatment facilities open up, back up more capacity. And so really excited that we'll be able to, as the courts are coming back online, as our hospital emergency departments are moving toward a different state of operations, that we'll be able to get our peer recovery coaches back in, have those intervention points throughout the entire continuum of not just the criminal justice system, but our other medical and other intervention points. So really excited that we are beginning to see some light at the end of the tunnel. So thank you very much.
It's a great report, Doug. Thank you for everything you're doing, and thank you to the governor for his efforts. I know that we had Representative McNamara call in, and if she's still on the call, I'd ask for a report out from her on behalf of the House Court and Criminal Code Committee.
Sure. I'm not going to turn my video on because I'm still driving, but so we probably won't meet next week because right now I only have one bill, and I don't want to make my members get up at 8:30 in the morning. I do know that the Senate Corrections Committee will not be meeting next week as well, so you guys might have a break. A lot of legislation went through on both sides. I'm going to sit down on Monday and probably prioritize Senate bills and look at what survived from the House and where it wound up in the Senate. But there's a few bills of interest that I put like emergency acts on just to facilitate getting those priorities out, because of some of the issues can't wait till July 1st. But other than that, there's a lot of good bills out there that have made an impact. There's a lot of bills that have spurred a lot of discussion. So happy to answer any questions anybody might have, but that's basically where we're at the turnover. Oh, and before I forget, the Juvenile Justice Reform Committee, I had a meeting with Senator Kreider and CSG last Friday. We'll have a meeting in April. They are going to report their preliminary findings at that April meeting. And some of the common themes you'll find is the conversation around data collection in the state of Indiana and the difficulty in doing so. and then the common definitions from county to county. And that's about it.
Representative McNamara, thank you, as always, for your attendance, and thank you especially for calling in today. I know how busy you are. Are there any questions for Representative McNamara before we move on? Hearing none, I'm not sure. I don't think that Representative Hatcher was able to join us this morning, but if she was, I want to make sure I give her an opportunity to add anything additional as the ranking minority member. Very well. Was Mr. Rutherford able to join us? Then I'd next ask for a report out from Judge Spitzer on behalf of the Indiana Judges Association. Judge?
Nothing new to report, Justice Goff. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, then I'd ask for a report out from David Bottorff on behalf of the Association of Indiana Counties. Good morning, David.
Morning, sure, thanks. Only thing I wanted to put on this group's radar is, Chris Johnson from the governor's office mentioned all the bills, federal bills that have passed and where that money's been going. The bill that's before Congress now actually does allow for replacement money. And so I'm assuming that the court fees are down tremendously due to the pandemic the last year. I never actually asked for a report on that, but my assumption is that. So because this new federal bill actually is revenue replacement, each of the groups on here may start to consider how they would document the loss of revenue due to the pandemic and be able to get that replacement money. And the amount of allocation coming back to each county is pretty phenomenal. And so it's just something that this group may want to start looking at if they've seen a revenue decline because of lack of court activity. This could be a replacement revenue. So we'll know more in the next few weeks, I think, if it's going to be enacted or not, but I suspect it will be.
Thank you for that, David. Any questions for David before I move on? I'd next then ask for a report out from Amber Finnegan, newly appointed president of the Association of Community Corrections at Counties. Congratulations, Amber, and welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. The Community Correction Association, we just had our executive retreat last month. So we've done some updates to our strategic plan and just developing some goals and strategies for us to enhance the professionalism and training and communication of our agency. So that was a good meeting, and we got a lot accomplished. One thing with House Bill 1006 is that there is written into it a revision of the Community Correction Code, which has been a really hot topic amongst us directors. So I would just really strongly ask that if this committee does develop some sort of overview of the Community Correction Code, to be sure we have I have a small group of seasoned directors that I think would be beneficial to provide some feedback and to give, a lot of history and that kind of thing. So I would just ask that if there is some kind of review that JRAC does on the Community Correction Code, that you allow us to have a small group of 6 members or 7 is what I have picked out, and that we are able to participate in reviewing those code revisions for community corrections.
All right. Well, thank you, Amber. And as we move into our new, probably new statutory charge, I'm sure we all look forward to framing that discussion. And so thank you for your willingness to participate and your members' willingness to participate. Are there any questions for Amber? Hearing none, I'd next move on to Devin McDonald and ask for a report out on behalf of the Indiana Criminal Justice Institute. Good morning, Devin.
Good morning. Thank you, Justice. I don't really have anything too much to note for CJI. I will say that we are in the process of awarding the contract for the victim notification project. So we are making some progress on that, and to follow up with that probably in the coming weeks will also be the data transformation project award. So hopefully here within the next couple of months, we'll start making some good progress on those two projects. So maybe within the next year or so, we can actually start pulling a lot of the data that we've been referencing and pulling it into a central location here, hopefully within the next year.
Thank you. Great. Are there any questions for Devin? Hearing none, I'd ask once again for Mary Kay Hudson to give a report out on behalf of the Office of Judicial Administration.
Thank you, Justice Goff. Continuing on the theme of jail information and victim notification, our office, or I've reported to this group before, that our office and the Office of Court Technology have been working with the Sheriff's Association pursuant to a grant that the Office of Court Technology received from the Criminal Justice Institute to look at a project that is for the purpose of enhancing criminal history information. But a component of that project is to build a custom jail management system. And so we've reached out to the Sheriff's Association, and I want to thank Steve Luce and Sheriff Clark for engaging in those conversations with us. Through that, we've identified 5 counties who are interested in working with the Office of Court Technology on a development project for the jail management system. Those counties include Howard, Vigo, Hendricks, Du Bois, and Grant counties. And so we're assembling a group of the sheriffs themselves, jail commanders, or other jail staff, and in a couple of cases, we're including community supervision and community corrections. Adam, if there's anybody from those counties that would like to be part of that discussion from probation, please let me know. That group is going to have its first meeting sometime in the next couple of weeks to begin gathering requirements for a jail management system. And that jail management system will connect with Odyssey, and there'll be some discussions about ways in which it can connect with other data management systems to really integrate that information at the local level, as well as to be able to pull that from the state level so that it could be of use to groups like JRAC. So we'll keep you posted on that. The Sheriff's Association also did invite our office and the Office of Court Technology to speak at the Sheriff's Training in April to talk a little bit about that project. So hopefully we'll get some additional interest from the sheriffs on that. And then one other note is that Angie Hensley from our office and Kristen Bonchbach from DOC Community Corrections are meeting on a regular basis to talk about various items of interest to community supervision with probation and community corrections. I think the main topic of their discussions right now is the grants and funding and how we can really be in good communication with one another about the funding that we have available for community supervision relative to what DOC has available, making sure that we are maximizing the resources that are available to the counties. So I just want to publicly thank Angie and Kristen for those efforts, because I think the more communication we can have between those groups, the better. And that's all I have, Justice Goff.
Thank you as always, Mary Kay. Are there any questions from members for Mary Kay before I move on? Hearing none, I'd then ask for a report out from Chris Blessinger on behalf of the Indiana Department of Corrections. Good morning, Chris.
Thank you, Justice Goff. So unfortunately, it's been kind of a rough and sad week for us here at our agency. Those of you who may or may not know have heard that we had a staff member, a lieutenant, who lost his life as a result of a stabbing incident up north at the Indiana State Prison. Lieutenant Eugene Lasco. And we have another sergeant that is actually currently in the hospital due to that same incident. So, we've kind of had a stressful, sad week with us. We have the viewing tomorrow and then the celebration of life service on Sunday. So we're all keeping the family and, everybody who works for the department in our thoughts and prayers. Just Amber, I know you had discussed, asked a question about, being a part of our discussions, and, absolutely you guys will be a part of the discussion. As we move forward with this, I'm sure that I'll be working with Justice Goff and probably even Mary Kay, reaching out to them to figure out, because this will be a subcommittee, I believe, of JRAC. So I think that we'll probably be discussing how that will look. So, you guys will be a part of those discussions. I also wanted to give an update. I know at the last meeting, I gave an update on our vaccines and that we were, starting to give vaccines for COVID in our facilities for our offenders based upon this, on the community standards and the ages and how the community is being done. So we've actually had approximately 788 offenders that have had their first vaccine. And we have approximately 425 offenders that have already been completely vaccinated. So I just kind of wanted to give an update on that. And at this point, I think that's all I have. So thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Are there any questions for Chris from members before I move on? Well, hearing none, Chris, our thoughts are certainly with you all in the Department of Corrections as our critical justice partner. And thank you so much for everything you do to keep all of us safe. And we look forward to continuing our discussions with you and with Community Corrections. And so thank you as always for your participation.
Thank you.
Next, ask for a report out from the new president of the Indiana Sheriff's Association, Sheriff Brett Clark. So Sheriff Clark, welcome and thank you for attending today.
Thank you, Justice. I think Steve is probably, our Executive Director, Steve Luce, has probably brought the group up to speed for the most part on our efforts with COVID-19. So I won't go into a whole lot of that, but we are having some pretty good success using these Binax cards for the testing. And then our next challenge, I think, will also be the vaccination of our inmates when they choose to get us there. I do want to say a special thanks and a shout out to Dr. Doss from DOC, who's been an excellent partner for us and just a really good leader in making sure our sheriffs are getting educated with our partners there in the system. So that's been a good thing. While our numbers are continuing to go back up, and there is some concern, as Chris mentioned, with the trials and things that we're going to be seeing and the more warrants and that have backed up. For the most part, if any good came from this, it has forced us all to communicate better, I think, in some of the counties even that weren't so good at that. So we've come up with some, encouraging folks to cite and summons and those kinds of things continue. So hopefully the lessons learned will keep going. When it comes to legislation, I think 1006, it wasn't mentioned, but it's one that we've had a lot of input on and a lot of support from both sides of the aisle, as well as all the stakeholders in our system. I think that's going to be good. It could perhaps serve as some kind of a model better than what has been proposed nationally, which is frankly kind of scary. I'm hoping in the future that to move on, that this idea of no wrong door that we learned about in Arizona, and it's also sort of a national idea, will take place in the discussions moving forward with what Jay mentioned, and that we can come up with a strategy either through the Deadwood group or this group to kind of fine tune our legislation next year to go to the next step in some of that. And I hope that that will be a piece of that and specifically drill down. And then finally, I would ask that this group or some, and I've asked this before, but I want to just say it again, I think it would be interesting for us to look at the result of the legislation that forced our sheriffs to sign people up for Medicaid and HIP. It's been a good thing. It's been well received in my jail. I was skeptical at first, but it would be interesting to me to see some statistical data to back that up and to say that, because Indiana did this, that was about September of 2015, which was my first year in office as the sheriff here in Hendricks. But it would be interesting to me to see if we can articulate that has been a successful thing and actually has helped people, especially as the discussion with, Medicaid exception at the federal level is such a topic. But that's all I had for the sheriffs, and I'm glad to be a part of this, and thank you all for giving me the floor.
Thank you, Sheriff. Are there any questions for Sheriff Clark before we move on? Well, Sheriff, certainly look forward to your tenure in office as president, and thank you for your participation today. I next ask for a report out from Jay Chaudhry on behalf of the Division of Mental Health and Addiction.
Like I mentioned earlier, I think our one of our big focuses related to this area has been building out these alternative paths to competency restoration. I think I've used the road metaphor before, and to extend that metaphor a little bit, it's like we're digging these roads with like one shovel essentially and no other equipment. It's just kind of gone very slow, very painful. I will say I've talked to some of my counterparts in other states who've done this, and that's just kind of how it always is when you're dealing with such a complicated topic with so many different stakeholders. So we're just plugging along there. Hope to see some major progress in this, spring and summer of this year as we start to hopefully move past COVID a little bit. The only other thing I'll add is we have our Behavioral Health Commission meeting this afternoon. You can go to the Indiana Behavioral Health Commission website to see the details for the live stream there. I would, invite anybody that was interested to take a look at that. So that's about it.
Thank you, Jay. Do any members have any questions for Jay before we move on? Well, Jay, as always, I appreciate everything that you're doing to make Indiana better and to make these mental health treatment services available to more Hoosiers who need them. So thank you, and look forward to our continued work with you. Next, ask for a report out from Chris Naylor on behalf of the Indiana Prosecuting Attorneys Council. Good morning, Chris.
Good morning, Justice. Thank you. I'm happy to report there are a number of prosecutors working with their county teams on the pre-trial certification process. It's still rather new, and it's a good rollout, similar to drug court, certification process. And we appreciate the assistance from Mary Kay Hudson. There's some questions that have come up, and Mary Kay has been very helpful. But that's the good thing. It sets out guidelines for best practices for pretrial, and so it's good to know that many counties are taking this on.
That is good to know. Are there any questions for members for Chris? Well, Chris, thank you very much, as always, for your continued participation in our discussions and your willingness to partner with all of our stakeholders. And at the beginning of the call, I heard that Bernice Corley had a conflict, and so I don't think that there's anyone for a report out on behalf of the Public Defender Council. But if I'm wrong about that, I want to make sure I give them an opportunity to give their report out. Anyone from the Public Defender Council? Are there any other JRAC members who I might have missed when asking for report outs? Very well, hearing none. I am going to then just indicate to all members that the council currently has only one upcoming meeting, and it is set for April. The council has been meeting monthly, and we've been doing that in preparation for and during the legislative session. Historically, the council has met quarterly. At this time, I would like to take recommendations on the frequency of meetings following the legislative session. So if there are any members who have thoughts about meeting frequency after the legislative session, I'd love to hear them.
Justice Goff, this is Mary Kay. I would propose maybe every other month as we engage in some of the new work with Mimi on the EBDM side. I think that's going to spark a lot of really great conversations that I think keeping the full council engaged a little bit more frequently than quarterly would be helpful. But I also think that meeting every other month would give any work groups or other conversations some time in between meetings to take some action and develop some recommendations for the full council. So I would recommend bi-monthly meetings.
Thank you for that, Mary Kay. Any other thoughts or objections to moving to bi-monthly?
I'd agree with that, Justice Goff. I think that one of the other things is when we were in the statewide EBDM process, we had gone through sort of a planning process where we identified some priorities and some things that we wanted to work on. And we've kind of gotten down the road on the pretrial project where it kind of has the momentum at this point of its own, and we can kind of just check in periodically. But there are a lot of other decision points, I think, that we haven't really had an opportunity to revisit. And so I think it'd be great to re-engage with some of the work that was done in the statewide EBDM committee and get JRAC sort of engaged in that, and then start re-engaging and moving forward on some of those other decision points. And so I think every other month is a great frequency to start that work.
Good. Any other thoughts, or I suppose maybe more appropriately, are there any objections then to moving to bi-monthly meetings at this point? Well, if there are, I'm not hearing any, and I generally listen when Mary Kay Hudson and Mark Spitzer make a recommendation. So it sounds like we're going to go to bi-monthly meetings. And the next meeting specifically then is scheduled for Friday, April the 23rd from 10 a.m. to 12 p.m. and an invitation for this meeting has been forwarded to members. I want to thank each of you for taking time to participate in today's meeting and for your continued work serving our Indiana communities. With that, I'm going to call our meeting adjourned, and have a great weekend, everyone.
Thank you, you too.